Joining us today is Congressman Steve Scalise. He's the House Majority Whip, and it's good to have you with us today talking about one of the most important issues for South Louisiana veterans, I think. And it's a letter the entire Louisiana delegation got together and signed to send to VA Secretary Robert McDonald. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Ken, we found out recently that the VA appointed a new administrator to be in charge of the region that includes Louisiana and Mississippi. And what really concerns us as a delegation is that the person is basically somebody that was run out of California. She was running the region in California. She was part of this VA scandal where they were keeping separate lists. They weren't properly taking care of our veterans. And ultimately, she testified before Congress, and the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, Jeff Miller, asked the Justice Department to look into whether or not she committed perjury because the answer she gave appears to be flat-out lies to Congress. And so what does the VA do? They should have fired her, but instead she moves out of California, and they put her in charge of Louisiana's VA hospitals. So I've got real concerns with that, and I joined with most of my colleagues from the Louisiana delegation asking the VA secretary to get rid of her and definitely not to have her in charge of Louisiana's veterans.
I'm always amazed that when I was growing up, whenever you heard somebody testifying in front of Congress, it was just some major thing, and you knew they were going straight to hell if they lied. But today we get people go up there and they lie, and they get promoted, or they keep getting bonuses, or a year from now we're still talking about the same thing. Can't we do something about this woman and get her charged with perjury and get her the heck out of the system?
Absolutely, Ken. One of the things we've asked is for the Justice Department to look into it. And look, President Obama has not shown any aggressiveness in confronting the VA scandal as a whole. When it started, we exposed it in Congress through our oversight hearings. And, initially the VA was saying, hey, look, this isn't even going on. The veterans are getting proper care. And we were hearing differently, so we started subpoenaing people. And we brought in some whistleblowers, and they pointed this out, and we uncovered the facts that they were not only telling veterans that, you're not waiting that long, or they were telling Congress that veterans weren't waiting long, but they were keeping a separate list that were secret lists that, in fact, showed some people were waiting for months. Some veterans actually died waiting for care while they were telling Congress that none of this was happening. And so many people have been implicated in this, but she was one of them. She was one of the ones that came to Congress and testified that veterans were only waiting days when, in fact, it was weeks and weeks in some cases. And she knew that. And so we've asked the Justice Department to look into whether or not she committed perjury. Like I said, she should be fired. Even if President Obama doesn't pursue this, the next president could actually go after these people and definitely fire them, but also look at putting them in jail.
Yeah. My concern is that if somebody does win the presidency and has the same thought process as President Obama, nothing's going to be done. All these people that have been performing criminal acts the last few years are just going to get off scot-free. In the meantime, we've lost vets, who waited days, weeks, months, or even years for treatment. And here in South Louisiana yesterday, I mentioned the fact that the VA had not helped our vets. Needless to say, I got some irate phone calls, people saying, wait a minute, the local VA is terrific. It's the national VA. Get that part straight. So the local vets seem to have no problem with the care they're getting in the Lafayette area. That's good.
Well, in some of the regions of our state, we hear that from our veterans, that they are getting good care. In some, they're not. What concerns me is she was run out of California because she wasn't doing things good there. You talk to people in California, and their veterans receiving horrible care. So you would think the president would have those people fired. But instead, he doesn't fire them. He just moves them somewhere else. But, of course, where they're moving them is here.
Yeah.
So now our veterans are going to be subject to the same kind of care that the veterans in California were getting that caused all of these problems. So, look, one of the important reasons you have presidential elections every 4 years is so that everybody can go out and state their case. How would you get the economy moving again? How would you get spending under control? But how will you take care of our veterans ought to be one of those issues that every candidate has to confront. And look, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, both the Republican and Democrat nominee ought to answer the question about this VA scandal and say, will you go in and fire all of the people who were involved in this, or will you just let them be reassigned like President Obama's done? And clearly they're two very different directions. I know I would say I want my president to be somebody who's going to hold these people accountable and fire the people who had these secret lists and didn't allow veterans to get the proper care, not do what they did with Miss McDougall and move her over to New Orleans and say, okay, we're going to have her running the VAs in Louisiana and Mississippi. She ought to be fired, and let every presidential candidate explain what they would do to these people that are still working at the VA who were directly involved in this scandal.
Congressman Scalise, it seems to me the president just is not connected to what is actually going on in the country. He must not be getting the briefings that other presidents have gotten, because this happened in California and then he moved her, or the administration moved her. It seems like the news should have gotten to Washington. This lady is lying. She lied in Washington. It shouldn't be that far a trip from Congress to the White House, and it seems like nobody gave any information.
And there is no secret here. I mean, it's not like the president doesn't know. Again, she testified before Congress. Many people, when she testified, questioned whether or not she committed perjury. But ultimately, that's something the courts decide. So we've asked, and again, the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee asked the Justice Department to look into whether or not this lady, Ms. McDougall, committed perjury. And so while she's being looked at for committing perjury, the president, in essence, gives her a promotion and moves her over to be in charge of all the VA hospitals in Louisiana and Mississippi. It's outrageous. We've called attention to it and said it ought to be reversed.
Absolutely. And so many things that, the president has just gone right ahead and done. It just seems like he's doing his best in the last year of his presidency, not to be a lame duck, but to do this legacy thing where people will remember him, especially for health care. And I think Obamacare's failed drastically, and I think his running of the VA is definitely on par with that.
This is his legacy, but what kind of legacy is it? Veterans dying, waiting for care. You see the economy in shambles. You look at foreign affairs. I mean, ISIS is running roughshod not only through the Middle East. They're recruiting Americans. They're moving into the West. They attacked in Paris. They attacked in San Bernardino, California. And he has no plan. He's still calling them a JV team. Mm-hmm. And his approach to dealing with them is how you would deal with a JV team when, in fact, they're a serious threat to our national security. So you can look at every level and you see failure. Again, we've got a presidential race this November. All of these items ought to be front and center in the debate.
Absolutely. Congressman Steve Scalise, our guest, the House Majority Whip. We thank you for being with us today. I know you've got a busy schedule, so we'll let you run. Thank you very much.
Great being with you, Ken.